It all started so well. Indiana had knocked off Minnesota, controlled that game. And on Saturday afternoon, as a 6 or 7 point favorite, they controlled the first 10 minutes against Michigan State and went up 19-6. They had a 43-33 lead early in the second half. And then it all unraveled. And instead of talking here positively, happily about IU on a 2-game streak and having won 4 or 5, we're going to have a serious talk. And it's like when you were a kid and you did the same stupid mistake over and over again, and your parents said, "We're not mad at you. We're just disappointed." Well, we keep seeing the same problems with this basketball team. And we're going to just dive into how frustrated and disappointed Hoosier fans are in how IU is doing right now. But Hoosier Nation, welcome to our 183rd episode of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage for IU sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on February 23rd, 2021, where I'm your host, Nithin Krishnan. Here with me tonight are usual podcast co-host Matt Lukens and Indiana HQ contributor Jevan McCoskey. Jevan, welcome back to our show. It's 50-something degrees in Bloomington today, except when you look at this basketball team, it just seems like a bunch of rain and storm clouds.
I mean, like you said in the intro, we so much wanted to just walk into this episode and say, man, you know, I think we went 2-0. Like, we should be saying that. It's when looking at that game, how well we controlled it in the first half. I mean, we closed the half on a poor little run, but yeah, it's not good coming saying we're only 1-1 this last week. The next 4 games, listen, it's not gonna get any easier.
It's not. Flat out, it's not. Like, even Michigan State's better. Clearly, it seems like they're a better basketball team. They're up double digits against Illinois right now as we're recording. Matt, same question to you, my man. I don't know. What were your thoughts as you were watching that Michigan State game? Because it looked like Indiana is in the driver's seat for the most part, and then it just completely spiraled out of control.
I mean, it was entirely predictable. I think that this would happen. We talked about it last week. We were like, look out for Aaron Henry. He can score. He's 13. Oh, he goes 9 of 17 for 27 points this game. Wow. Oh, we need good guard play. It won't be good if we don't get good guard play. Rob Finney goes 0 of 6 from the field, 0 of 4 from 3. Al Durham, 0 of 4 from the field, 0 of 2 from 3. Rob posts 0 points. Armand at least hit 4 free throws. Yeah. Like, I don't know what else we can say on this podcast to help you understand that there are a few things in basketball that you need. And you need a couple of your players, not just one, to play well. And in game, like game in, game out, we only have one player that is consistent, and that is Trayce Jackson-Davis. Some might say Race Thompson is that second player. Sure, and he has really good games sometimes, and then he has really bad games. But Trayce almost never has a really bad game. Armand, same way. He has some really good games, and he has some really bad games. And that's fine. But you need at least another person to be consistent to be a good basketball team. And right now, we do not have another consistent player, especially from the guard spot. College basketball is the game of guards, not big men. And we've had nothing but good big men in the Archie Miller era, and we just can't, for whatever reason, fix the guard situation. And this Michigan State game, was case in point about why you want to have good guards.
Let's dive right into it. Look, after Indiana split the last week, they dropped 2 spots in the KenPom ratings. 4 spots in the KenPom ratings, and they dropped 2 spots in the net rankings. They're now KenPom 33, net 52, squarely on the bubble. Let's talk about the guard play. I'm just going to jump right to it. This might be harsh for a couple guys like Rob Finney and Al Durham. Finney, who's a junior, Durham, who's a senior. I would sit Rob Finney for Wednesday's game against Rutgers. And it's not so much a disciplinary thing. it's something where I look at Rob Finney and look, back on Wednesday against Minnesota, he had 10 points. He contributed in a bunch of different areas, but there just aren't that many of those games. There aren't enough of those, and there are way too many of these zeros that he puts on the board. And I say, look, take a week off. And it's hard in the Big Ten. There are a lot of good teams that you go up against 2 or 3 times a week. Take a week off, refresh, recuperate, get pissed, because when you come back on Saturday, we're going to need you to play your brains out. And I would go even further and bench Al Durham for the start of Wednesday's game. I would let him come off the bench. He's more consistent and he's been more productive than Finney, so I wouldn't go so far. But I'd say, look, Al Durham, my man, you scored 20-something points against Northwestern. You're a 48% three-point shooter in your last 10 games. You can't have games like this. And I'm starting Wednesday's game with Lander, Franklin, what would that be? The Hunter, Thompson, and Jackson Davis, and then you figure everything else out. Matt, am I out of my mind? I mean, what are you thinking about as you look at this guard play? Let's not just talk about problems. What kind of solutions do you have to fix this?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we're past solutions, right? The problems are problems. Now you have to find ways to stopgap them. They're not really solutions. You're not going to fix Rob Finney from one week to the next. You can't just throw Miracle Grow on Rob and all of a sudden he becomes prime Yogi Ferrell. Although that would be nice. Not going to happen. So what are some solutions? What are some stopgaps, not solutions? What are some things we can do to lessen the bleeding? So, like Nithin said, one of those things could be, let's change the starting lineup, right? Let's give them a little bit of a kick in the butt. And the saying goes, nothing speaks more to you than the riding the pine, right? The bench is a great motivator. It's true. So put them on the bench. I like that idea, But you don't want to be too harsh for the player either. This is where coaching comes in, because then you're just killing his confidence. And if he already has no confidence, then it can only get worse. So it's just there's a lot of issues involved. Another thing I would look at doing is on the fly, change a little bit of what you do on offense. Like, obviously what you've been trying to do all this year doesn't work. And going away from your game plan shows a little bit of weakness in the coaching staff. But at a certain point, you got to break, right? You bent, but you're not breaking. Just break, right? Like, just throw something out there and give it a shot. The dribble handoffs and the dribble weaves aren't working. Haven't been for the 4 years you've been here. So figure something out. If it's run more pick and roll. Like, figure something out so that you can put your players in places to succeed. And a little bit of a tangent, but I just looked up Arkansas's team. Now, why is Arkansas important, Matt? That's a great question, podcast listeners. I love you guys when you have these questions. Well, that's because they have Justin Smith. Now, Justin Smith, you might remember him, was on the team and transferred. And everybody was like, well, maybe we'll be better without him. Well, Justin has only gone on to have one of his best years of his career. Justin plays 28 minutes a game for Arkansas, lower than he did at IU. Scores more points, has more rebounds, has more assists than he did last year at IU. As a high contributor, you go into any post-game thread on Reddit about Arkansas, they love him because he's one of their best two-way players. They play him at the 4. They play him as a small ball center at times because they get the best out of him and his athleticism. The coaching staff needs to look at their players and go, our system isn't working for the players. We need to change it up and put the players in a position in which they can succeed. And right now, that's not happening for players like Rob and Al. So it's up to the coaching staff to maybe put some stopgaps in to help that out.
Yeah, Jevan, you look at Finney and Durham. They played 66 combined minutes on Saturday and went 0 for 10. Would limiting their playing time help them be more productive? Do you think this is you've gone too far at this point, so you just ride them to the finish line? How do you look at Indiana's guard play at the moment?
Well, speaking of that game, when we played Michigan State, you look at it, Trace had 34, Race had 15, and Armand had 13. That's 62 of our 71 points, right? And we've discussed it a little bit in the past. Finney, we know what he's going to be, right? He's not there. He's not, like you said, Miracle Grow isn't going to help him become prime Yogi Ferrell. But benching Al Durham to me is a little bit of a stretch. I think he's a senior. He's a leader in other aspects than just trying to put the ball in the basket when it comes to being on the floor. And he is a 48% shooter from long distance. But my solution is something that Matt mentioned last week. Jerome Hunter hit the last 3 games. The game against Minnesota, he had a career high 16. Against Michigan State, he only had 5. But then in the last 3 or 4 games that he's played, he has played extremely well. Like I said, you know what you're going to get with Rob. I don't know if hurting his confidence is the worst thing to do. Like I hate saying that because I don't want his confidence to be weakened by any means. But he's giving you basically nothing at this point. So why not throw Jerome Hunter into there, and then so you have Durham, Hunter, Franklin, Thompson, and Trace. That's a big starting 5, and then that's something also that Archie has said he wants to get Jerome Hunter and Race Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis on the floor together more often. So why not use this time to try and see what that looks like?
Yeah, and here's the thing. To me, you're playing him, and I'm guessing his performances like Saturday hurt his confidence just as much. If you go on, you play 30 minutes, and you put up an you put up a bagel, that's got to be just equally as devastating to your confidence. So I don't really see a win, a win in either direction there. I'm also not so sure that you know what you're going to get out of Rob Finney every night. I'm not sure you know what you're going to get out of any of these guys every night, except for Jackson Davis. And even he's got, some slow starts in him and some inconsistency in him too. But let's set him aside. Rob Finney dropped 18 at Nebraska. He dropped 18 at Iowa. He didn't score against Michigan State. He didn't score against Illinois. So you've got to find a different way to get to him. And I think you can also put Al Durham in the same conversation because to this point, unless I'm forgetting something obvious, that hasn't been a path that Archie Miller has taken. He's died on this hill. He has died on the Rob Finney and Al Durham hill. He has started them. He has given them the keys to the car. He benched Devontae Green last year. He benched guys like Justin Smith. He's benched other players. Christian Lander and Anthony Lill and Jordan Geronimo barely see the court, especially Geronimo, who didn't play against Michigan State. Lill played a minute or 2 on Saturday. Mm-hmm. I think this is a perfectly fair route for Archie Miller to take. And look, let's face it, Matt, just like you were saying, if you don't have good guard play, doesn't matter who it is. If you don't have good guard play, you're toast in this conference.
Absolutely toast. You're worse than you're just cooked, right? You're done. You can't do anything. All the cooking references, right? It's not you can't win without good guards. And to your point, you said, Archie has rode with Finney and Al. I'd go the other way, which is that if they have zero confidence right now, like I said they might, and they actually might, why don't you just stick with them? There's a whole other argument to be had where you just throw them the ball and go shoot out of it, right? And it's the riskiest of all the solutions, right? The less risky way is, okay, let's work in the rest of the team. Let's work in Lander. Let's work in Leal. Let's try to give them shots. But there's also a universe in which they start having a bad game. Like with Trace Jackson Davis, right? He has a slow start. We're still going to give him the ball, right? And that's going to breed confidence in him just because he knows he's going to keep having the ball. If Finney starts with a bad game, Rob or Al starts with a bad game, right? Both of them start with a bad games shooting. Just tell them to keep shooting it. That's what this team needs to do. They need to keep shooting it. Al's a 48% three-point shooter over the last 10 games. Rob isn't a bad three-point shooter. He just doesn't take shots. So we need to, at some point, just tell them they need to keep shooting when they're in there. If you want to take minutes away, that's fine. But when they're in there, they should take the responsibility, not be afraid of the shot, not be afraid of the pass.
So my only thing against that is when you have a game like Michigan State where Trace has 34 on 18 shots, he needed to shoot the ball 30 times that game. And I'm not kidding. There was not one person on that team who could stop Trace. He should have had 50 points that game. And the 7 shots that he missed, A couple of them were bunnies. So, I mean, I get it, whatever. He's done that for the duration of the season. But you have games where like this where Finney and Durham combined 0 for 4 or 0 for 10 from the field and then 0 for 6 from 3. In that sense, it's not a good idea to go in there and just take more shots, especially when Trace is 11 for 18 and should have the ball more in his hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still like Archie Miller's not going to do it. But if I was running this IU basketball team, I'd sit Rob Finney for Wednesday's game. You know, I know Geo Baker's a good player, but I think a guy like Franklin or Durham can hold him defensively. I'd give Finney a chance to refresh, gain a different perspective from the bench, let the game breathe a little bit, and then try to come back here for the huge final 3-game stretch of the regular season and then turn him in play. Jevan, you talked about Jackson Davis and a guy who might be able to score 50 points in that game on Saturday and take 30 shots. One of the things we have seen late in second halves here, though, is this idea of fatigue. You know, and it looks like when you play guys like Jackson Davis and Race Thompson, and you on Saturday you saw it with Finney and Durham and Franklin all getting over 30 minutes in this grinding Big Ten schedule, you're going to see some struggling players late in the second half, some heavy legs. How has fatigue played a role with this team, and does Archie Miller need to rely on his bench a little more down the stretch, starting as soon as this game on Wednesday, to help his guys out for the stretch run?
Well, I'd be stupid to think that fatigue wasn't a thing, right? Like, obviously, when you play, like Trace plays 35, 36 minutes a game, that's going to wear on your legs throughout a duration of a season. And then to your point, like going deep into the bench, Leo didn't see the game against Minnesota. Geronimo didn't see the game against Michigan State, and Leo barely did, playing only 2 minutes. Do I think it's a bad idea to go deep into the bench? No, I don't. But do I think it's a better idea to stick out with your starting 5, minus maybe Rob Finney or Al Durham? I do. I think you at all times have to have at least Trace or Race on the floor. And whenever you have Trace or Race get into foul trouble, then you're going to have to play more minutes. Fatigue is a thing, yes, and it has played a factor on this team. But I think it's just one of those things you're going to have to live with because those guys have to play.
They've got to play, but man, Matt, like I look at the situation and I say, hey, you've got to find a way to sprinkle in some minutes for Jordan Geronimo. We've got to find a way to give Jerome Hunter a longer leash. You've got to give Lander and Leal a bit of extended playing time. And if it means you got to play small, it means you got to play small because if if you're going to play a bunch of close games and Trace Jackson Davis is worn down at the end, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, we are in big trouble. And honestly, like I'm sitting here feeling like we have problems that we could have figured out that was going to be a problem at the beginning of the year. Like, we knew Christian Lander was going to need time to get ready. He's an 18-year-old kid, was 17, is supposed to be in high school, and is playing. Like, he was going to need time. We knew Rob Finney is very inconsistent. We knew this after last year. Al Durham, same thing. We understood that this was a problem. And so these problems should have had a game plan. Like certain things should have gone on in the coaching meetings in which they would have go, okay, if this goes wrong, Rob has a terrible year or whatever, what do we do? Like there has to be plans in place. And this coaching staff, for whatever reason, those plans have not worked. And so
they think way too highly of Finney and Durham. That's what it all comes down to.
That too. And again, I get the loyalty aspect of it as it's your coaching staff. You recruited them. You developed them. You see them play in practice every day. You want them to succeed. I understand how they could be in their corner. That's, to me, means they're good people. Like, and nobody ever doubted that about this coaching staff. But for the love of God, like they needed to have meetings just in case because this is their job on the line, right? Like if we lose on tomorrow and we've now lost 2 in a row, 2 games that we had to win, we go and play Michigan. So that's 3 games lost in a row going into
Michigan
State again at MSU in East Lansing.
And then road game at Purdue.
And then road game at Purdue. I don't see us winning either of those. And now we're looking at we have to get 2 or 3 wins in the Big Ten tournament. and we'll probably be playing in the play-in games.
Here we go.
Again.
Here we go.
Right? And
yeah.
that is unacceptable. Like, I get IU might have a bad year every once in a while, but playing in the first 4 in the Big Ten is unacceptable for IU basketball. In fact, where we're at now is unacceptable for IU basketball, and it's been this way for 4 years. And so at what point are we going to sit here and say, what is the common denominator? And I've said this multiple times on this podcast about the last 4 years, and that is this coaching.
There's one answer. There's only one answer.
Players, we've had players in and out. It's not the training staff. It's not the development staff because we had them in and out. It's the head coach and a couple of the
you can't even point to the fans. The Big Ten fan bases aren't even at these games this year.
That's what I'm saying. It's nothing but the coaching staff. So sadly, we sit here and we have a problem with our coaching staff.
Yeah.
About coaching. Is it going to get fixed? I have my doubts now. And I'm just disappointed, right? Which is the title of this podcast. I'm a little salty about it and disappointed. And meanwhile, you look at other programs, and I'm sure I speak to all of Hoosier faithful in this. When you look at Baylor, right, and their team, like, wow, that looks like fun. You look at Kansas, wow, that looks like fun. You look at Ohio State, hired at the same time as Archie, by the way. Wow, that looks like fun. Except losing to your rival is never fun. I would hate if I was Ohio State, but that was a fun game. Like,
unbelievable.
Michigan, Ohio State. Can we just take a second and talk about that game? I know it's not in the script at all, but that was a fun game. I watched that game. I was like, I miss IU basketball being in that position. I remember watching that Indiana-Iowa game for the Big Ten championship, and Yogi hits the shot. I remember watching that game and going, wow, I could look forward to 3 more years of this. That was like 5 years ago.
Unbelievable game on Sunday between those two teams. And I mean, you keep seeing it now. On that note, Michigan State has decided to play inspired basketball after beating Indiana, and they're 64-49 here at the under 8 timeout in the second half against Illinois, a team that most people are pegging as a 2 seed, which is a friendly reminder that if you're at the top of the conference or at the bottom, every game, even Nebraska, every game's tough, and it's a grind and it's a battle, and so on and so on and so on. All right, Jevan, look, Indiana's 12-10 right now. They're 7-8 in conference play. There 4 games remaining. We talked about those 4 games a minute ago. Indiana might be favored, and it's a slim might right now to beat Michigan State, and that's it. As you evaluate this team and where they're at over the course of the last 3 to 5 weeks, going into this 4-game stretch, how do you think this team's going to do? Give me a win-loss prediction. Give me some things you're looking for.
The next 4 games?
For these next 4 games, because let's face it, it might, the Archie Miller decision might all come down to this. Indiana's NCAA tournament hopes will definitely come down to this. What sort of things are you looking for in this final 4 games of the regular season?
You want to hear my 4-game record? 3-1. IU's going to go 3-1. That one loss is going to be at home against Michigan. They're going to win their last 3 road games. We're going to walk into Mackey and win for the first time in God knows how long. I know, Matt, you want to see it happen. I know you do. It's going to happen. I promise you. No, but what needs to happen is what has needed to happen for the entire year. It comes back to guard play. And I mean, it feels like, a broken record, but maybe the fact is we need to just start playing different guards like we've talked about in this episode. Play different guards more minutes. Trace needs to be Trace. Race needs to be Race. That they need to be that 1-2 punch down low. And I think we need to get back to playing the kind of defense that, where we are kind of expected to see out of an Indiana team, because in that second half, we gave up 52 points to an average offensive team in Michigan State.
Below average. They're below average.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you see that game, and then you see games like when we play against Iowa where we hold the number 1 offense in the country to less than 70 points. You just don't know necessarily, I guess, what you're going to get with this defense. But we need to start playing for the last 4 games, and to get to that 3-1 record, we have to play elite defense. That's where it all starts, and then the guard play follows suit. But then Trace and Race just have to keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah, Indiana's given up at least 70 points in 6 of their last 7 games. The double overtime situation against Northwestern kind of skews that, but it's still 5 of the last 7. So obviously they've got to tighten the screws defensively. Matt, we talked about these 4 games coming up, all tough opponents, even the Michigan State game where Indiana might be a slight favorite. How do you think IU's going to do, and what sort of things are you looking for in the home stretch?
Yeah, I think Jevan stole my answer from me, which is defense, right? I was watching that game, the Michigan State game. I went, wow, we're playing no defense. And then I remember sitting in the Archie Miller press conference when he was first hired in Assembly Hall. I snuck in, I skipped class and went to the press conference, and we're going to be a defensive first, tough team. And I looked at that game and the performance they were putting on, and I remember us being up 10 about 5 minutes before, and I was like, that's not what I'm watching. So I would like to get back to that. Like, both times we've played Iowa, I watched that and I went, this is what Archie Miller wants us to play. This is Archie Miller basketball. If we could consistently do this, we'll be a top team in the Big Ten and competing for championships. Like, there's a blueprint that is there. Now, it's not being executed every single game. So, 1, defense. Good job, Jevan. 2, I'm going to make this a lot shorter of an answer than I have before. 3, I see the second was my point about making it shorter, but now I'm making it longer. 3 is guard play. Play Christian Lander more. I know I just talked about defense, and then I said play Christian Lander more, which are, a bit counterintuitive, but I just let him learn on the fly. Just play him more. Obviously, Rob Finney isn't working out. Give a little bit more minutes to Christian Lander. And then the 4th thing is, if the 3-pointer isn't falling, don't be shy about shooting the 3-pointer.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one for me.
We were rebounding the ball pretty well against Michigan State for the most part until the second half, and then they pulled away. But the offensive rebounds are pretty good. If you miss a shot, it's not the end of the world because it gives a second chance opportunity to one of our big men down low. Race is a monster. He had a great game against Michigan State. Trace is the same way. When you look at this Rutgers team, they struggle against teams that can spread the floor. So IU would do very well for themselves if they could make some 3-pointers.
My gosh. Oh, my gosh. That sounds like sweet music to my ears. John Legend in my ears right now. You have a record for us, Matt? Final four games here?
I want to say 3-1. I'm going to say 2-2. I'm going to say we'll win the 2 games I think we'll win, which is Rutgers and Michigan State, and we'll lose the 2 games that I think we're going to lose, which are Michigan.
So my question is, if we only win 2 games, how many games do we have to win in the Big Ten tournament to make it into March?
I think you're in. I think with the Big Ten the way it is, if you're a game above 500 going into your conference tournament, which Indiana would be 14-12 going into the conference tournament, if that happens, even with a loss, you're giving yourself some wiggle room. If you ask me, the Big Ten is loaded. And the brand name, I think, will be a little bit too much to pass up if you're comparing Indiana against, I don't know. I'm not going to throw a random school out there right now without looking into it. But if you're 14-13 going into the Big Ten tournament or going to NCAA tournament, I think you're in as far as Selection Sunday is concerned. But here is my problem. I don't think Indiana's going to win a single game the rest of the way. I don't think Indiana's going to win any of these 4 games. Tell me why they're going to beat Rutgers besides the fact that, Rutgers might miss a few shots. I don't know. They're going to be upset tomorrow going into that game too because they just came off a home loss to Maryland. Michigan's not in the same stratosphere as Indiana. Forget that. Michigan State looks like a team that might have found something against the Hoosiers, and now you've got to go up to Michigan State might have found something, and now you got to go up to Breslin and face them, and then Purdue's a horrible matchup. I don't see Indiana winning any of these games. And look, I've got to say this. This game against Rutgers, I think, will make or break the entire season. It'll make or break the NCAA tournament result as far as Indiana is concerned, because if they win, I think they'll be able to stick together and keep pushing forward. And I think with the loss and then the follow-up game against Michigan, I think it's just going to lead to all sorts of trouble. Now, we asked all of you, all of our listeners, on our Hoosier Sound Weekly podcast poll, which you can see by following us or even going to our Twitter page at The Hoosier Sound. We asked, look, 4 games left. How many do you think Indiana will win? 59% of people voted they're going to either win 0 or 1. 34% agreed with you, Matt, and said 2. 6% agreed with you, Jevan, and said 3. And 1% of the most passionate and positive and optimistic folks in Hoosier Nation think they're going to win all 4. And I'll go this far. I think if Indiana even wins 1, one win in the Big Ten tournament will be enough to get them in. But we'll see how it all plays out here as we head into
6% people. I promise you, we'll get there.
Yeah, I'd love to watch an IU game with those 6% of people. That's great. And then Nithin, back to you said this Rutgers games may make or break our season.
So. Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit bigger than that. It may make or break this coaching staff's like existence here, right? Like they are coaching quite literally for their job tomorrow. Because they lose tomorrow, I don't see us winning any of the next 3 games, especially if we lose tomorrow, any of the next 3 games.
Yeah.
And if you miss the tournament with this team and an All-American Trace Jackson Davis, you know, the fans are going to be like, we're already just disappointed. And like the rest of the fan base is just going to check out. And when that happens, you have to make a change. So
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is where I would look at Archie Miller and say, hey, man, think of an outside-the-box solution to this type of thing. If that means sitting Rob Finney Wednesday against Rutgers, that's what it means. If it means giving someone unexpected a bunch of playing time, like Jerome Hunter, 30 minutes, or Jordan Geronimo, 15, 20 minutes, I don't know. I mean, this is the time we've got to be a little desperate, and you got to think outside the box. It's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU Sports. And look, while the men's team's going through their struggles, the women's team keeps steamrolling their opponents. And now they didn't crush Michigan back on Thursday, but they fought hard, scratch and claw type game with the Wolverines. And Michigan, who was number 11 on Thursday afternoon, fell to Indiana at Assembly Hall. And the Hoosiers have now won 6 in a row. They're ranked 11th in the AP Top 25, which is a school record for how high their ranking has ever been. They've been ranked in every poll this season, and they've got 2 big games coming up. They're heading to Wisconsin on Wednesday night at 7. That game's on BTN+. And then a Saturday afternoon contest against Ohio State in Columbus. Ohio State's a really good team. It's going to be a top 20 matchup. That game will be on Big Ten Network. So on Saturday, you can watch the Indiana-Michigan game. That'll wrap up at 2 or 2:15. Grab a snack, call your parents, talk to your friends, come back to BTN at 3 o'clock, watch Indiana-Ohio State. The Hoosiers are in second place. Solid control of second place in the Big Ten. They need Maryland to slip up at some point. It doesn't look likely, but anything can happen. By the way, for those of you who may remember previous college basketball seasons being as top-heavy as they were with the number 1, 2, 3 teams kind of running the table, that's not happening this year. This women's tournament is going to be wide open. Any team in the top 15 or 20 can make a run to the Final Four, and I absolutely put Indiana in that group. So keep an eye on this team going forward in March Madness. Just a friendly reminder, if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at IndianaHQ or at the Hoosier Sound. You can also head over to YouTube, search the Hoosier Sound, and you'll find us right there. We've got 94 subscribers right now. So if you can help us get to 100 here over the next week or the next couple of weeks, that would be incredible heading into March Madness. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast. So, Jevan, I'm going to talk to you first here, man. Let's get to these previews coming up. Indiana's got Rutgers first. Michigan comes up after that. This matchup against Rutgers is on Wednesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern, BTN. Indiana's a 3-point underdog. The Vegas prediction is something like 68-65 Rutgers. Ken Palm also likes Rutgers by 3. Rutgers earlier including the earlier head-to-head contest. Rutgers has won 4 or 5 against the Hoosiers. It'll be the first game where Rutgers will have fans in attendance. They have 25% capacity. It's also their senior night. Jevan, as you look at this matchup, who are the key players that are going to have to step up for Indiana to knock off the Scarlet Knights as 3-point underdogs?
If things go the way that I hope they're going to go and that we've talked about through this podcast, I think Jerome Hunter is going to have to be a player that has he shown in the last couple of games, steps up and has a big game. Hopefully he plays 25, 30 minutes like we all kind of hope he does. And he continues to be a threat on offense. I mean, he gives you also a lot more on defense. He's a lengthy defender. Can if someone gets by him, he can still, chase down, block, maybe hopefully not pick up fouls. But no, I think we're all expecting Trace and Race to do what they do. And I'm really looking forward to Jerome Hunter hopefully having a really big impact on this game.
Yeah, Matt, as you look at the Scarlet Knights, who are some of the key players IU fans have to watch out for? I know we faced Rutgers earlier this season, but who are 1 or 2 of the key Scarlet Knights that IU is going to have to game plan and prepare for going to this matchup on Wednesday night?
We got to worry about 2 guards. We got Ron Harper Jr., Geo Baker. Killers.
Isn't it funny how we have to worry about their guards? Like, we always have to say, hey, worry about their guards.
Well, of course we do. We don't – I'm not going to say that. We have not so good guards sometimes. Anyways, there you go. Miles Johnson, their big man, again, had a lot of blocks against us. The last time we were out there, he had a bit of a SWAT party. Hopefully that is not the case this time. And we'll come up with some plans to stop him from having like 8 blocks in a game. And then Jacob Young as well. They're a really good player for Rutgers. They have a very good team. I really like Rutgers. I respect the heck out of them and their coaching staff. They're really good. So, again, it's going to be a tough game to win, and we have a really bad record going to the rack, which is weird because you think our Indiana guys would be – I know our Indiana guys would be used to playing in high school gyms, but apparently that's just not the case. So, sad times out here.
Yeah, Jevan, what you got? Jevan, what you got about this game? No, it's all good.
I was muted. Matt, you mentioned Miles Johnson, and I mentioned that Trace Jackson Davis is going to do what Trace Jackson Davis does. But something that he's going to have to do in this game that he didn't do last time we played against Rutgers for a majority of the game, and something that he really hasn't done all season, is catch the ball on the perimeter and attack. Don't work with your back to the basket against Miles Johnson. We've seen it. He can block your shot, and he will out-rebound you. He is he's one of the more physical players in the Big Ten. Trace Jackson Davis is much more athletic. He's a better athlete. He has quicker feet. Take him off the dribble if you have to, and just go right around him, please. That is something that I mentioned Jerome, but now I'm thinking about it. That is something that I'm really looking forward to in this game, is how Trace Jackson Davis decides to attack Miles Johnson.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I remember watching that game against Rutgers, and Jackson Davis blew by Johnson once, dunked on his face, and then never really went back to that the rest of the game. So, yeah, there are a lot of little nuances and a lot of little wrinkles to the game, and you've got to try to exploit every advantage that you can if you're Archie Miller and the Indiana staff. If you ask me, there are 2 things I'm looking out for, okay? First of all, foul them if necessary. They're a 62% free throw shooting team this season. They've gotten marginally better since we saw them last, but still, Miles Johnson, for example, if he's got position inside, hack him. He's a 38% free throw shooter on the season, not on a pretty significant number of tries. So if you're in a compromised position defensively, take the foul, use them wisely. You've got 5. Make sure you don't give them anything easy. They're also really good as far as not turning the ball over. So the one number I'm looking at all game as far as Wednesday night's concerned is the turnover battle. If Indiana can win the turnover battle, they'll win the game. Flat out. I'm just going to say it. So that's how I look at this game going forward. Obviously, I said earlier, I don't expect Indiana to win this game. So when I look at the prediction, I think it's going to be a pretty disgusting game, to be honest with you. Both teams struggle offensively. I've got Rutgers winning this one in a close one, 57-55. I don't think either team's going to get the 60. Of course, that's what happened against Northwestern, and then we saw like 2 overtimes. So, Matt, as you look at this game on Wednesday night, what's your prediction? Who wins and by how much?
Well, I like to think that I'm a slightly positive person. So I'm going to go with an IU win. I'm going to say we're going to score over 60 points because we'll have a nice offensive game. Jerome Hunter's going to have a career high in points and in three-pointers, and we're going to win 67-59. And we'll have a nice, comfortable win. There you go.
All right. Okay. 2 words that we haven't associated with this team too much. Nice and comfortable. Jevan, it's on to you. Who wins this game on Wednesday night and by how much?
Yeah, Matt, really quick. You talk about some like guards getting in there and shooting. Jerome has no problem putting those shots up. That he's one of our players who will go in and let it fly. And that's, obviously something we all like. So, but my prediction for this game, I said 3-1, so I'm a very positive person. IU's gonna walk. They're gonna win. They're gonna win tomorrow. I like your prediction. I think it will be an 8, 9, 10-point game. I'm hoping it will be, like you said, nice and comfortable. Not two things that go well with this team. But yeah, Indiana, a little bit lower. I'll say 64-56.
Oh, amazing. You guys, hey, if you're right, I'll be the first person on Tuesday next week to be like, wow, look at this idiot. All right, anyway, so that's how we're looking at this Rutgers matchup. Make sure you stay tuned to Indiana HQ all night tomorrow night, and that's Wednesday night, just to be perfectly clear. We're going to have wall-to-wall coverage of this game. Like I said, I think it's the biggest game of the season by far for IU, especially after dropping that one to MSU. We're going to have recaps. We're going to have analysis. We're going to live tweet it. We're going to have all sorts of fun stuff, the quotes from Archie Miller and the players after the game. So make sure you stick with us over at Indiana HQ. It's time for a social media shout-out. How convenient. In addition to Indiana HQ, Matt, there were a couple of Twitter accounts out there that, put out some really fun stuff over the last few days. It's 36 years to the day of the Bob Knight chair toss. What did you see on social media that caught your attention?
Yeah, well, first off, you got Sports Center tweeting the chair toss, which is always cool to see IU content make it on ESPN's main Twitter account. Martha the Mop Lady had some really cool mentions and backstory about the tweet. Indiana Big Ten shared some videos of Jay Edwards in the 1989 buzzer beater and the 2016 win over Purdue, which I was there for. It was awesome. And then, there's so much more. We had a little bit of some rumblings on social media tonight about some IU basketball news, something to keep an eye out for in the next 24 hours. So a lot of stuff is going on social media right now. You had Tiger Woods. I think Tiger Woods injury news just came out. He had fractured his leg and shattered his ankle, which is not great, but it's a lot better shape than I thought he was going to be in after looking at the car. So if you want some more positive Indiana news, go follow us at Indiana HQ on Twitter and on Facebook and on YouTube, and the Hoosier Sound on YouTube and Twitter, and then Indiana.HQ on Instagram.
Wow. MVP, gold star for Matt tonight. That's pretty much how to find us on social media. Obviously, that's where you can find us as we head down the closing stages of the season here. So much on the line, including Indiana's second game this week, a matchup against the Michigan Wolverines on Saturday. Michigan's number 3 team in the country in the polls. They're number 3 team in KenPom. Their offense is ranked 7th in the country as far as KenPom's concerned. They have the 11th ranked defense. You can catch this game noon Eastern on Fox on Saturday. It's at Assembly Hall. Michigan had a 23-day layoff because of COVID-19 restrictions placed by their school. Ho-hum, they've just won at Wisconsin and at Ohio State since returning. No big deal. Also a pretty comfortable win over Rutgers. Juwan Howard, Jevan, he plays 8 guys. Hunter Dickinson's their best player. What are your keys to victory here if Indiana is going to go in and pull off the upset? KenPom says 72-67 Michigan.
Yeah, we've said it before. Indiana doesn't really blow teams out, but they very rarely get blown out. They don't lose games by very much unless you're talking about Ohio State or Texas, really. Matt, I'm going to steal your card. We need a miracle. This is one of those games. I'm usually optimistic, but Matt, we need a miracle, man. It's going to take a lot, and Michigan's going to have an off day, and if they can't have an off day after not playing for 23 days, what makes me think they're going to have an off day when they travel to Bloomington?
Fair. Well, I said this last week, and Nithin gave me a weird look when I said it. And I said, I think we match up well with Michigan. Weirdly enough, I still think that. Again, Hunter Dickinson is really good. But guess who also is really good? Trayce Jackson-Davis. If you can get Hunter Dickinson in foul trouble, Michigan becomes a lot less dimensional team. Michigan is so good when Hunter's out there because of the way he can play offense and play defense. He's a really good mover of the ball. He's really good in the pick and roll. You take him off the court, Michigan becomes a lot less dynamic. So I would like for Trayce Jackson-Davis to just get the ball and go at him every single chance he gets. Don't get, dissuaded by a block. Don't get defeated that he has 12 points already and we're down 10. Keep going at Hunter Dickinson. Make his life hell down there if you're Trayce Jackson-Davis. Again, he's still a freshman, right? And those things is going to come into his mind. Trayce has 2 years worth of game knowledge now in the Big Ten. Hunter doesn't have that. Yeah, he's played in some big games for Michigan, but he's still a freshman. And there's going to be alarm bells going off when Trayce Jackson-Davis is going at him. So he needs to take that advantage he has and go after him. Because if you can take Hunter out of the game, Michigan is a lot less of a monster of a team.
Exactly. No, it's a good point. And for what it's worth, Michigan has not gone up against either Luka Garza or Kofi Coburn this season. They're going to do that down the stretch here coming up. In fact, an interesting schedule wrinkle, Michigan plays on Thursday night against Iowa. And it's a real quick turnaround. They're going to have to prepare, rest, recover, get on a bus or a plane, and come down to Bloomington for an early start on Saturday. So it's just something to think about. Overall, though, as far as Michigan's concerned, you got Hunter Dickinson, team's leading scorer, 15 points per game. He's the third best rated player as far as the Ken Palm ratings are concerned. Trayce Jackson-Davis has slipped to fourth in that, by the way. Isaiah Livers and Franz Wagner are each averaging double figures. They've got three other guys averaging at least 8 points per game as well, including Mike Smith, Sean D. Brown, Eli Brooks. As far as I'm concerned, the thing I'm looking at is Michigan does almost everything well except for one thing that stood out. That's they don't force many turnovers. They don't create a lot of havoc defensively. They don't get their hands in the passing lanes. They don't block a ton of shots and turn them into fast break points the other way. So, look, if you aspire to be Virginia, if you aspire to be a Wisconsin-type team, if you aspire to be one of those ball-controlled, disciplined, work-through-the-post type teams, you cannot have a single sloppy mistake against Michigan on Saturday. I mean, no dribbling it off your foot out of bounds, no passes where you thought a guy was going to cut and he didn't cut, and so you threw it 10 feet wide. None of that. You've got to play a clean game as far as ball possession and ball handling is concerned against Michigan, because if you can do that, now you've got a shot. Well, we'll see how it all plays out. Jevan, I'm going to start with you. Indiana looks like they're going to be something like a 5-point underdog going into this game on Saturday. You've got the Hoosiers coming off an 8-point win over Rutgers. What happens against Michigan on Saturday? Who wins by how much?
I said 3-1, and this was the one in that 3-1. I just, for the love of me, I just cannot see us defeating Michigan, especially how hot they are. I think we lose by 10 or 11. I see the score being something like 73-64, somewhere in that range. Monster game from Trayce Jackson-Davis, but I think just again, you mentioned not having to turn the ball over against this team, and that's just something that Indiana it's plagued us the entire year. So I can't see us pulling this one out.
Yeah,
I hope I'm wrong.
Well, we'll see how it all plays out. Matt, look, we talked about a schedule advantage for Indiana. You've talked about how you maybe like this matchup for the Hoosiers. Who wins on Saturday and by how much?
Yeah, I like this matchup for IU, but doesn't mean we're going to win it. There's a difference between liking the matchup and actually executing. Will we execute on Saturday? I don't think so. So it's either we're going to win, or if we win, it'll be a close game. It'll be a nail-biter down to the wire. We'll pull it out in the end. If we lose, it's going to be ugly. Like, ugly lose. Much like the Ohio State game. Again, there's, weirdly enough, a lot of similarities between Ohio State and Michigan. I know that there's a Michigan or Ohio State fan listening to this podcast just threw up a little bit. But seriously, from the basketball perspective, they're very similar. Again, they don't force a lot of turnovers. They have a really responsible and just a rock of a big man who's very dynamic as well, offensively and defensively. And they have really tough guards. Like, same kind of team. And dynamic wing players like Livers for Michigan. Like, they have it all. They're fully built teams. But IU can take advantage of some of the little weaknesses that they have. However, that being said, it's going to be like a 15-point loss. But if they do win, remember that I said it was possible. And we matched up well against them. Let's remember
Waffler. Waffling. Can't play that card. So you're saying what? Michigan's going to win this one by 15?
By 15, yes.
You want to throw a score out for us just for fun?
85-70.
All right, there we go. Ooh, little high-scoring action there. Look, as far as I'm concerned, yeah, like I said, Michigan's on a whole different level than Indiana is. I can see Indiana staying with Michigan for some time in this game. I could see them hitting a few shots, making this interesting. Indiana has knocked off a team like Iowa a couple times before, and the schedule does favor the Hoosiers here a little bit. But when it's all said and done, I just think Michigan's got too much firepower. I'm going to say it's going to be 75-66 in favor of the Wolverines. So Indiana, if that holds true, if they're unable to win either game this week, they would fall to 12-12. They'd be 500 with 2 games to go. And we're going to have a really exciting podcast next week, without a doubt. All right, look, as we wind down tonight, Matt, I know there's been a lot going on. And we talked about 36 years to the day of Bob Knight. We talked about guard play being an issue, brutal Big Ten. What are your closing thoughts as we wind down here on this Tuesday night?
Yeah, if we lose these next 2 games, Nithin, we'll go into the podcast next week and be like, we've lost 4 of the last 5 games, which is not ever what we want to talk about on this podcast. Trust me, we want to be positive and happy and talking about a winning team. And we'll be back talking about how the coaching staff hasn't fixed something that should have been fixed, 2 years ago, right? And so now we're sitting here with must-win games. Again, they're must-win. We're going to watch them. Are we going to enjoy them? Probably not. Are we going to be stressed out? Absolutely. We're still going to root for the Hoosiers and hope that they win. I would appreciate it if they could at least win one of these, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably going to be the Rutgers game. If they win the Michigan game, I'll be ecstatic. But win one of these, and I feel like you're in a really good position. You lose both of these, and I feel like it's tragic. So,
yeah, if Indiana beats Michigan, I'm going to do something ridiculous. I'll think about it, and then I'll say it at the end. All right, Jevan, look, Michigan State finished the win off. They upset Illinois earlier tonight. They won by 9, knocked off the Illini. Clearly, they're not as bad as we think they might be. What are your closing thoughts as we wind down tonight, whether it's on the Big Ten or anything else?
Well, first things first, the ladies basketball team. I once again have to say congratulations to them. I feel like this is only a stepping stone to where they're going to be and where they want to be, and where I think they're going to get to. So congratulations to them, but job's not finished. Listen, you said if we go 0-2, we're going to be really sad next week on the podcast. If we go 1-1, we'll be content. If we go 2-0, we will be mind blown, confused, but still super happy. Just look for maybe a subtle change in the lineup here or there. Look for Trace Jackson Davis to continue to dominate, and make sure you tune in next week.
There you go. That's all we got. Look, here's my closing thought. Okay, if Indiana beats Michigan, this is all I've got. If Indiana beats Michigan, I'll wear something stupid on my head, like an Instapot or empty shoebox or something for the entirety.
If we go 4-0 the rest of the year, I'll cut my hair.
Here we go. All right, Joe. Look at that. If Indiana wins out, Jevan will cut his hair. Matt, look.
Why am I getting dragged into this?
You have a golden opportunity to commit to something, and it's up to you.
Okay, I will dye my hair
Well, there we go. All right.
if we go 4-0. If we go
All right, there we
4-0, I will
Yeah.
go platinum blonde. So there you go.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, folks, that about wraps it up for our 183rd episode of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you to our live audience. You guys are all beautiful people. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com. To find everything in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.